When the India-China standoff in eastern Ladakh began back in May 2020, it began on the shores of the huge Himalayan Pangong Lake in Ladakh. Much has happened since May 2020, but now China has made one of its most aggressive moves, building a bridge that spans the north and the south shores of the Pangong. It is being seen as an extremely aggressive and hostile move by the Chinese, and we've got the clearest satellite images of that bridge that you're going to be seeing here on India Today. Watch this report and then I'll tell you what it means for India and what it means as far as possible conflict is concerned. One of the world's highest lakes and the epicenter of the world's biggest military standoff. It is here in Ladakh in May 2020 that China triggered a historic military mobilization on both sides. A deployment that continues to this day, with the two Asian giants massed against each other across the line of actual control. And now, nearly a year after the two sides disengaged from this tense friction point on the Pangong Lake's shores, forced by India's aggressive preemptive push into areas south of the lake, something has emerged. Take a close look at these images. What you're seeing is a 315-meter military bridge built by the Chinese across the narrowest point of the gigantic Himalayan lake. Maxar satellite images accessed by India Today show this under-construction bridge. Heavy construction equipment, including cranes, deployed in the area by Chinese engineers. Work on this bridge began in September last year. Built aggressively during the winter, the Chinese bridge is nearly complete. And once it is, it could be a game changer. Before the bridge was built, Chinese forces had to move nearly 300 kilometers or 10 hours around the lake to remobilize on the southern shores where the Indian army had taken surprise aggressive postures in 2020. Now with this bridge, the Chinese army can pour its forces into the Kailash Ranges area within just a couple of hours. In other words, the advantage India had in this area is being aggressively undermined by the Chinese. Taken aback by what the Indian army had done in 2020 by occupying heights on the southern banks of the lake, the bridge represents China's attempt to make sure it can never happen again. India has strongly objected to the construction of the bridge in area held by the Chinese for over 6 decades.
Our government has been monitoring this activity closely. This bridge is being constructed in areas that have been under the illegal occupation by China for around 60 years now. As you're well aware, India has never accepted such illegal occupation.
China has been rapidly building infrastructure, including roads and bridges in the region, including in the Galwan Valley, since the India-China standoff. India too has speeded up construction of roads and bridges for quick movement of men and material to match the Chinese deployments. But the Chinese bridge is by far the most aggressive move with iron and bricks in the ongoing Ladakh standoff.
This is going to change the entire dynamics of LAC because this infrastructure is not linked to the infrastructure development in Western Tibet, but with the aim of changing the status quo on the LAC now as well as in future.
And it makes them logistically better and tactically better, gives them better battlefield mobility also. So I think China should be a little sensitive to the Indian concerns, and if they can do that, we also have certain options which are open to us.
While the under-construction bridge at Pangong Tso is only a fraction of the gigantic infrastructure overall deployed by China, it is also a prime reminder of China's true intentions and priorities with respect to India. In New Delhi, this is Ankit Kumar for India Today.
No, the reality is this changes a lot of things as far as India's preparedness and its capability in this area is concerned. So let's call a spade a spade. We will not gloss over things. This is what the Pangong Lake looks like. Most of it is in Chinese-controlled territory in Tibet. This is finger point 4. where clashes had taken place, starting the entire standoff. Now, this is the place on the Pangong Lake where that bridge is. And this is the area in South Pangong where the Indian Army had deployed in 2020, completely putting the Chinese on the back foot. At that time, forces from the Chinese side had to go all the way around the lake. All the way around the lake, more than 250 kilometers, 10 hours long journey to finally come here and face the Indian forces. But now with this bridge that's over here, their forces can simply pour into South Pangong in a matter of 1.5 to 2 hours, completely cutting down the time required to come and engage and face off with Indian forces should our side try to do something to preempt the Chinese in this area. So this entire stretch south of Pangong, where India had an advantage, now is seemingly negated because the Chinese have built a little bridge here from which their forces can simply pour into this area at short notice instead of going all the way around this enormous lake. And now we've got satellite images of this very bridge that's been built across it. Let's put those on your screen for you to show you what exactly that bridge looks like on camera. These are new satellite images from Maxar, which India Today's Ankit Kumar has accessed, which shows you jaw-droppingly clear images of what this actually looks like. The implication is it allows China to deploy at lightning speed in South Pangong. The big question is, has India's advantage in this sector actually been negated? Implication number 2 of this bridge across the Pangong. Despite disengagement, China is preparing for a confrontation in Pangong, appears to be the implication. The question we're asking, can India still attain advantage through preemptive moves in South Pangong? Implication number 3, China appears to be spooked by India's 2020 preemptive actions and it doesn't want a repeat of that same situation. But we are asking, can India catch China off guard in other sectors? It doesn't have to be Pangong, it doesn't have to be the Kailash Ranges, it can be elsewhere. Why not? The implication number 4, a Chinese bridge is a response also to India's own aggressive infrastructure push in this region and elsewhere in eastern Ladakh. But the question is, can India negate this Chinese bridge advantage with its own infrastructure? That's the big question that we have to ask right now. We will call a spade here on India Today, and we will always tell our viewers the truth about where things are at. Abhishek Bhalla, Defence Editor, Gaurav Sawant, Senior Executive Editor, both with me. Abhishek, first to you. We've heard what the External Affairs Ministry has said, but what is the military's assessment of this? We know that India, of course, has also been building a lot of infrastructure in this area, but this bridge, appears to be in many ways a game changer for the Chinese because it allows them to pour forces at a very rapid rate into a place where they were caught off guard and where India had a perceived advantage just a few months ago. What is the Army's assessment of this and how do they plan to counter it?
Shiv, there's no doubt about the fact, as far as the military is concerned, that a lot of ground dynamics will change after this bridge, because this bridge is coming up just east of the LAC, about 20-25 kilometers from the LAC. It starts at a place called Khurnak Fort, and it links up the two banks of Pangong Lake. And what changes on the ground is that earlier the Chinese military had to take a loop around the lake, travel for about 10 to 12 kilometers, 10 to 12 hours, 200 kilometers. That now will be reduced to say 50 kilometers and a couple of hours. And it's not just the bridge that the Chinese are making here, Shiv. There are also roads connecting to the bridge, which are different from the existing road structure that the Chinese had on the southern bank. So remember that that's also very, very big change on the ground, because they will need roads that will come to this bridge on the southern bank. So that will also reduce the mobilization time. All this has been taken into account by India. In fact, one thing is for sure, that if India has to carry out a similar operation as it did at the southern bank when the Indian Army occupied heights at the Kailash range, it seems that kind of action will be picked up and reacted to by the Chinese in a much quicker manner. So a lot of things will change. India will have to change some tactics on ground, but we'll have to wait and watch, because it's still too early. what many officials say is that, every infrastructure construction or every change that the Chinese do, we cannot be reacting to that because, that means that we are playing into the adversary's hand. So the commanders on the ground are watching these developments taking place and accordingly tweaking their own tactics.
True, we can't be reacting to the Chinese, but the Chinese are certainly reacting in a very smart way to, some actions by the Indian army. And be that as it may, this is a very belligerent infrastructural push because this bridge serves no purpose except to support large-scale conflict in that region. Gaurav, how do you think the Indian army can respond to this? The devil's advocate question is, has China sort of grabbed the advantage in the Pangong sector, or is there still something that the Indian military can do in this particular area? And like you were earlier mentioning, we can still grab an advantage in other sectors. It does not have to be in Pangong. But does that mean Pangong is a write-off, Gaurav?
Shiv, the Chinese army was red-faced the moment India went and occupied the South Pangong Tso, the Kailash ranges there, because we were dominating the Chinese Moldo garrison at that point of time, and they had absolutely no response to that. So this is a reactionary step, a reactive step that the Chinese have taken to reduce India's advantage. At the same time, right from the time, some were asking whether this is an intelligence failure on India's part. Right from the time when the first step was taken, the satellites were watching it, the unmanned aerial vehicles were watching it, but it's 27 kilometers from the line of actual control where this construction has taken place. That's point one. Point two, it does give a major advantage to the Chinese that from Rudok, their movement from North Bank to South Bank is no longer 200 odd kilometers or a 10-hour circuitous route around the lake. They can now cross the lake at the narrowest, which also makes it vulnerable, God forbid, should the balloon go up, because that is a target that can be taken down immediately. And then their advantage is lost. But should that not happen, then they do have an advantage till the time the balloon goes up. After that, this advantage is lost. Point one.
Yes.
Point two. Why is it that China is not going back from Petrol Point 15 and areas around that? That is because they fear whatever advantage they may have got, in case they move back and India comes in, that India can choke them on their access to Galwan. And that is their fear. So this also shows that there are tactical heights and other heights that India is in control of or can occupy should the need be in this situation. So when you look at the Chinese deployment in Ladakh on their side, a lot of their deployment is taking place, which some may argue, at least for now, is defensive. It could become offensive, but then India is also deployed, and if both armies are deployed, who has the advantage? Then probably depends on who has the first mover's advantage.
Gaurav and Abhishek, thank you very much for that. A very, very serious issue that the Indian Army, the military establishment is completely cognizant of. Not everything, of course, can be discussed on television, but we will continue to ask the questions and put the spotlight on issues of national security of this kind without sandpapering out, the upsetting reality, perhaps, of how things are changing in the Ladakh military conflict. We will continue to bring you the latest on that. Now, remember, Indian military troops, Indian Army troops are some of the best trained in high-altitude warfare. They are the best in terms of surviving and performing combat in the most hostile conditions. Unlike the Chinese, who've had a very bad run, especially just a few weeks ago in the Konkala area of Ladakh, where there were several PLA casualties in the cold weather. But India Today's Ashraf Wani visited our troops at the line of control in the sensitive Uri sector facing Pakistan-occupied Kashmir to spend some time with our winter warriors and show you how they live, they operate and defend India.
There are no off days at the line of control. The Indian Army soldiers deployed in the Uri sector are guarding the frontiers at a bone-chilling -20 degrees temperature. India Today hit the ground to bring to you firsthand the hazards faced by our brave Jawans living hundreds of miles away from their homes to serve their motherland. The team is on the way to one of the extreme forward army posts on the LOC in North Kashmir. After the heavy snowfall last week, the whole region is under a thick white cover. This road was closed for a week. The Border Roads Organization has finally cleared the route for troops posted to forward locations.
Mainly the major concern of this snowfall is the threat of snow avalanches in these far-flung and hilly areas where the accumulation of snow gets triggered into the avalanches. That is the major threat for the coming days, particularly in those areas which are avalanche prone.
There is never a lull in the forward areas. From open attacks to infiltration, the threats are multiple. Even in times of peace, the Indian soldier is ready for any eventuality.
The brave hearts of the Indian Army are on highest ever alert, as there are apprehensions that the infiltrators are using these tactics for the infiltration where weather is very bad, it is heavily snowing, because we have seen last year, in fact even today, the inputs with the security forces are that the bad weather is an opportunity for infiltration. That is why the army Jawans on the line of control are high alert.
The vigil is much needed as the enemy has changed strategy. During the past few years, most of the infiltrations on LOC were observed during such bad weather. This makes the vigil during these harsh winters even more important.
We have seen during last many years that the winter season is being chosen by the infiltrators to infiltrate into Jammu and Kashmir. And that is why the army has been put on high alert all across the line of control to foil any kind of infiltration. And also there are inputs that bad weather, when it is snowing, when it is low visibility, that is the time when most of the infiltration bids took place. To foil those infiltration bids, we are seeing that round the clock army soldiers are guarding this fence here on the line of control.
Coping with this weather is itself a challenge. The soldiers are equipped with special clothing and light weaponry.
यहाँ बर्फबारी में हम स्नो कोट पहनते हैं जो वाइट कलर का होता है। इसमें हम क्लाइमेट हमारा सही रहता है और ना ही इसमें हमें सर्दी लगती है। ये काफ़ी बेहतरीन होते हैं और ये वाटर प्रूफ भी होते हैं। अक्सर हम इसीलिए पहनते हैं कि हमारा क्लाइमेट सही रहता है और हमारा कंसीलमेंट जो भी है वो दूसरे बंदे को पता नहीं चलता है।
इस हथियार का नाम है 7.62 mm 716 असॉल्ट राइफल। यह यूएसए का बना हुआ हथियार है। इसकी रेंज 500 मीटर है और इसका जो रेट ऑफ फायर है वह 650 से 850 राउंड प्रति मिनट है। इस हथियार का वजन कम है इंसास राइफल की बनस्पत और इसका रेट ऑफ फायर बहुत अच्छा है उसकी अपेक्षा।
As we said earlier, there are no off days at the line of control. The watch here continues round the clock. With Ashrafani, Bureau Report, India Today.